Aloha and welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today as the Maui Police Department presents its preliminary after-action report of the August 8th, 2023 wildfires. At this time, I'd like to introduce Chief John Pelletier.
Aloha. Approximately 6 months ago, this state witnessed the worst disaster in its history and the worst fire that this nation has seen in over a century. The purpose of this preliminary after-action report is to document the police response to the incident. We have an obligation to the community we serve. We have an obligation to the policing profession, and we have an obligation to those we lost to document what went right, what were the challenges, and how can we get better and move forward. As we begin, what we want to do is take a moment. We're going to take 100 seconds, and we're going to pause in silence to honor those we lost. If it seems like that was long, realize this: for the families, the pain never ends, and the silence is deafening. This report will be made available to everyone upon the conclusion of this press conference. It'll be posted on our website, and it'll be made public for the entire world. It's also going to be shared, it actually has already been shared, with the Police Executive Research Forum, who will distribute it to the entire law enforcement profession this week. The audience of this report is the law enforcement profession. There are 6 pillars in 21st century policing. The 6 pillars are the guiding principles for what this report was woven. The 6 pillars are legitimacy, policy and oversight, technology and social media, community policing, training, and wellness. This is a preliminary after-action report. The final report will be written approximately 6 to 12 months from now. We believe that that final report is about 90% complete. We want to get feedback from the law enforcement profession so that we can make sure that there was nothing we missed. This press conference today, there'll be 3 speakers, and there'll be 3 different parts that they're going to cover. I'd like to introduce the principal architect and lead investigative detective that oversaw this, Sergeant Chase Bell.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you all for joining us here this afternoon as we present our preliminary after-action report. We'd like to recognize the many partnering agencies that assisted in the immediate days that followed the wildfires. These agencies provided support and assisted in a variety of roles. We'd like to thank these agencies, others that may not be listed here, as well as the community who have assisted and shown their unwavering support in the aftermath of this tragedy. The Maui Police Department immediately initiated efforts to document how the incident response was being managed and all related aspects of doing so. The following partnering agencies supplied the Maui Police Department with resources and information that assisted in the development of this preliminary after-action report. Now, in the months that followed, information from a variety of sources was obtained and analyzed to become the foundation of this report. These sources of information would include, but was not limited to, interviews with responding officers, a review of over 26 hours of recorded radio transmissions, including both police and fire transmissions, a review of all calls for service, including 911 emergency and non-emergency lines that included over 4,500 calls, over 20 hours of body-worn camera footage review, citizens' accounts, news, social media, and open source media. Now, beginning in the early morning hours of August 8, 2023, Maui County began to feel the effects of severe weather. Strong and sometimes unprecedented winds persisted throughout the day. Fires would ignite in Olinda, Lahaina in the morning, Kula before the afternoon fire in Lahaina would begin. The Puleu fire that eventually made its way to Kihei would also begin in the afternoon of August 8th. We acknowledge the devastation and widespread effects that this caused to Maui County as a whole. But for the purpose of this preliminary after-action report, Lahaina was the focus. Life safety is always our primary priority when responding to any incident, and especially in an incident of this magnitude. Our officers' efforts remain focused on this, whether it was by conducting evacuations, the facilitation of emergency traffic getting out, as well as the transport of individuals. In the preliminary after-action report, the sequence of events are intended to provide the reader with a timeline of events pertaining to the fires beginning on August 8, 2023, and ending on August 9, 2023. The sequence of events is not intended to document all events that occurred during this time frame. Now, although our preliminary after-action report sequence of events encompasses all of the fires, this sequence of events that I'll share today will focus on the police response to the initial hours of that afternoon fire. As we all have come to know, this was an unprecedented, prolonged, constantly evolving, and wildly dynamic event. So beginning at 5:33 a.m., Waine'e Street would be closed between Pane'ewa Street and Dickinson Street due to fractured utility poles. Police would initially close this roadway and it would be taken over by a utility company. By 5:37 a.m., utility poles would fracture at Honopi'ilani Highway and Keawe Street. This intersection would face closures and openings throughout the day for safety reasons, as well as to allow the utility company to repair the area prior to the afternoon fire. Now, this citizen-sourced video here will show the condition of that intersection just around 6 a.m. As you see in the video, the pole in the foreground as well in the background will snap and they'll begin to lean over the roadway there. Excuse me. Okay. At 5:52 a.m., Honopi'ilani Highway would be closed between Aholo Road and Hokiokio Place due to fallen utility poles. Police would also initially close this roadway and it would be taken over by a utility company. This area, these poles that were down, would also take down adjacent poles shortly after that. This picture here will depict some of those poles, the utility poles into the roadway. As you can see in the background, there are utility poles completely obstructing the roadway here. By 6:35 a.m., the start of the morning fire would be the start of the morning fire. And by 6:38, police would conduct evacuations of the adjacent neighborhoods. By 8:19 a.m., the fire would be deemed 90% contained. Now, with Waine'e Street still closed between Pane'ewa Street and Dickinson Street, at 11:44 a.m., Kilauea Road would be closed between Ka'uhi Place and Aki Street due to down power lines. This area specifically would have significant issues throughout the day roofs flying off of houses, actual sightings of houses flying off, as well as the power lines. So officers would close this roadway. However, the officers that were there would then move to Lahaina Luna Road between Front Street and Luakini Street due to these roofs that continuously were flying off of businesses in the area. By 1:25 p.m., Honoapi'ilani Highway would be closed between Papalua Street and Lahaina Luna Road due to fractured utility poles. And by 1:40 p.m., utility poles would begin to fall near Dickinson Street and Mill Street. However, that roadway was not closed. It would remain open but obstructed. So by 2:17 p.m., the morning fire would be considered extinguished. And by 2:50 p.m., multiple poles would fall onto Honoapi'ilani Highway between Keawe Street and Kapunakea Street. The roadway would be closed from Keawe Street up to Fleming Road. The roadway was impassable at Kapunakea Street, headed south in both directions. However, because those poles that had fallen, the adjacent poles were posing a risk to motorists in the area, so the roadway was closed between Fleming and Kapunakea as well. Excuse me. So this body-worn camera still shot shows an officer standing at Keawe Street and the highway looking north towards Kapunakea. This next shot here is from Kapunakea looking Mauka, or towards the mountain at the highway and that Shell gas station on the corner. As you can see, the fallen utility poles also have some lines and cables suspended over the roadway that was causing a complete obstruction of that intersection. So as of 2:50 p.m., we had multiple major roadways that were obstructed. Honoapi'ilani Highway between Keawe Street and Fleming Road, Honoapi'ilani Highway between Papalua Street and Lahaina Luna Road, Lahaina Luna Road between Front Street and Luakini Street, Waine'e Street between Paneava Street and Dickinson Street, as well as Honoapi'ilani Highway between Ahola Road and Hokiokio Place. MPD was manning all closure or obstructed roadways, with an exception of those last two, Waine'e Street and the highway between Ahola Road and Hokiokio. So for those who are not familiar, Lahaina has a single roadway that runs all the way through Lahaina town. The Lahaina bypass provides an alternative route to bypass portions of Lahaina town, however, does not run all the way through Lahaina town. So this here is going to be our officer locations at the beginning of that afternoon fire, which will start at 2:55 p.m. So again, as we go through, these dots will depict officers. Or this may not be their exact location at that exact time that's shown there, but it's going to be their general location between those time frames there. Officers, as you can tell, especially as the incident occurred, officers were moving quite a bit throughout town. So by 3 o'clock, MFD, the Maui Fire Department, would arrive on scene, followed by police shortly after, and immediately begin evacuations of the neighborhoods. By 3:20 p.m., police would shut down all traffic from the Lahaina bypass and from Honoapi'ilani Highway onto Lahaina Luna Road, as to only allow evacuating traffic and no new traffic onto the road. The bypass would also be closed between Lahaina Luna Road and the Kahoma Stream Bridge, and this was because the fire, as you can see at 3:24, would jump the bypass here. So that was for visibility as well as the proximity of the fire to the roadway. So by 3:22, the fire would jump Makai, or towards the ocean over the Lahaina bypass. And by 3:24, police would begin evacuating the Kilauea Mauka neighborhood. Other officers would respond to assist with that evacuation. And this is going to be two short body cam videos here. We're going to have a disclaimer that there is graphic audio as well as video in these two videos here. So the first video, we have two officers in their initial response headed to Kilauea Mauka. They're headed down Lahaina Luna Road, Makai and Lahaina Luna Road, and about to turn on Kalena Street. As you can see, the visibility is already deteriorating in the area, and then they'll make their way, try and locate those first houses that the fire was going to be affecting. The second video is going to have an officer's viewpoint. He's going to be headed Mauka on Lahaina Luna Road, or towards the mountain from the highway. And you'll see traffic already beginning to back up, as well as the visibility and the proximity of the fire to the roadway already at that time.
Everything's on fire. What house was that? was this one, I think. Get him off, I don't know, just right there, turn around, cut it off.
So at the end of this second video, you can see this is actually the fire right there on the roadway here in this still shot. You can see the visibility already deteriorating in the area. So by 3:28 p.m., structures would be already about to catch fire along the south side of Lahaina Luna Road, and traffic is gridlocked in the area. Two officers, would continue evacuations. Sorry, I'll show this video first. The first video, we're going to have these two officers, the same two officers that had initially conducted those evacuations of the Kilauea Mauka neighborhood. They begin to head they begin to head more down Lahaina Luna Road to continue those evacuations. However, when they're doing so, they're just turned off Kalena Street, headed down Lahaina Luna Road. There's going to be traffic building up already in the area, as well as the fire dangerously close to the roadway here.
Hey, slow, this car right here. Bro, everybody's stopped right. Car's on fire. Is it? Bro, we gotta tell Central.
Central, we gotta get
All the cars down.
All the cars down, Luna. It's jumping. And the cars are stopped, and the fires are right next to the cars.
So this depicts all the side streets at that point that were funneling onto Lahaina Luna Road to evacuate. This neighborhood really only has 3 ingress-egress points, and that's going to be headed Makai on Lahaina Luna Road, Mauka on Lahaina Luna Road, or Komomai Street. So they're all evacuating Makai and Lahaina Luna Road. Mauka wasn't really a viable option at that point, as that's where the fire was coming from, and that's where the visibility was the worst. Komomai Street is the other egress route out of the neighborhood. So by 3:38 p.m., multiple structure fires would be reported on Ka'akolu Street, and by 3:41, a structure fire would already be reported on Pau'u Place, a little further Makai. At 3:45, evacuations were continuing in the neighborhood. However, it immediately became clear, with evacuating traffic gridlocked throughout these neighborhoods, that these officers needed to prioritize getting the evacuating traffic out of the neighborhoods. So 3 officers would head down to Keawe Street to try and help alleviate that chain reaction of traffic that was building up into the neighborhoods in Kilauea, Mauka, all the neighborhoods off of Lahaina Luna Road. This other officer here on the bottom, the green with the white circle, he had conducted evacuations of Aki and then Kale Street, and ended up picking up an elderly female who needed an evacuation to the emergency shelter, so he would leave. These next 3 officers would go to Keawe Street to try and alleviate that traffic, with one of those officers coming back up into the Kilauea Mauka neighborhood. This officer here that you'll see on the bottom, this officer will make his way to Hokiokio, or Oholo Road in Hokiokio, to try and check in the status and see if the utility company can get the roadway cleared for evacuating traffic. That officer would come back and stop at the intersection of Mill Street and Lahaina Luna Road. He had to stop there as traffic was bypassing the officer at the highway and Lahaina Luna Road to make their way up Mill Street, up and around to head Mauka on Lahaina Luna Road. This was hindering the ability for emergency traffic to evacuate down. So that officer would stop traffic headed Mauka, headed up Lahaina Luna Road from Mill Street. This officer you see here moving, this officer would respond from the area of Paunau Street in response to a call for service at Halemaho'olu, the Senior Assisted Living Center. He'd attempt to make his way Mauka on Lahaina Luna Road. However, due to some roadway obstructions, and the visibility in the area, the officer had to turn back around. On his way down, he'd actually end up picking up a couple of fire evacuees. So, but at 4:05 p.m., another officer from the Mauka side, from the Lahaina bypass area, would make his way to the Halemaho'olu. When he got there, he conducted evacuations. However, their structures already fully engulfed in flames there. And by 4:08 p.m., the fire was already in the area of the Mill Street and Dickinson Street. So we're going to move here. It's a little bit further north in Lahaina. The area of the Lahaina Civic is going to be on the top, the police station and the post office there. This officer here, he's posted at Leali'i Parkway and the highway. That officer there was stopping all southbound traffic there and turning them back around to head towards Kikoena. This traffic was attempting to head back towards the fire. This other officer here, this was the officer that had picked up the elderly female from Aki Street. So when the officer was headed to the emergency shelter, he noticed that he'd take Front Street and noticed that traffic was beginning to build up on Front Street. However, there's no really roadway obstructions, up on the highway or anything like that. So on that officer's way back, he'd stop at Front Street to help the officers there. It's going to be depicted here. This officer positions his vehicle blocking the two southbound lanes. And this officer get out of his vehicle and actually run down Front Street to try and expedite the movement of traffic that was coming off of Front Street. That's going to be shown here. The officer is going to be in a yellow circle. Oh, excuse me, I missed it. So traffic was free flowing, basically coming out of front, and the highway had minimal traffic at that point. However, at 4:10 p.m., multiple utility poles and lines would fall onto Honoapi'ilani Highway between Leali'i Parkway and Kikoena Street. This would be a body-worn camera from that same officer from that last video with that being aired over the radio, the poles coming down.
I've been advised by multiple drivers that multiple power lines are down north of the station on the highway. Yeah, we have all.
So as you can see, traffic pretty free flowing. It's not gridlocked coming off of front, and the highway is pretty open heading northbound. However, there's still a ton of southbound traffic coming at this point. So this is going to be the area of Kikoena Street on Honoapi'ilani Highway. Both these photos are looking north. So both northbound lanes are blocked by the poles, multiple poles in that area. You can also see the amount of traffic still attempting to head south back towards the fire as vehicles are evacuating the fire in Lahaina town. So the status of the roadways as of 4:10 p.m. Officers at the intersection front Fleming and Honoapi'ilani had traffic coming out of front northbound, traffic flowing from Fleming Road, sending them northbound as well. There's this other officer here stopping all southbound traffic just north of that intersection and turning them back around to head northbound away from the fire. And then this officer at Leali'i was also turning on vehicles from headed south as well. This here, Honoapi'ilani Highway, at that point, we did have that officer, as I mentioned earlier, that was stationed at Kapunakea Street at the highway, blocking traffic from entering that intersection. By then, that officer had left that location to assist in the evacuations. So that roadway, however, cars could not go south from Kapunakea on the highway, cars could go north. But at this time, there's really minimal to no traffic coming up Kapunakea headed north. Again, southbound from Kapunakea was totally obstructed by the hanging wires, the elevated wires and cables off of the ground there. So as of 4:10 p.m., these are the major obstructed roadways. Honoapi'ilani Highway, northbound lanes totally obstructed between Leali'i Parkway and Kikoena Street. Honoapi'ilani Highway between Keawe Street and Kapunakea Street. Honoapi'ilani Highway between Lahainaluna Road and Papalua Street. Waine'e Street between Paneava Street and Dickinson Street. Honoapi'ilani Highway between Holo Road and Hokiokio Place. And the Lahaina bypass between Lahainaluna Road and Kahoma Stream Bridge. And again, so I cover the major roadways. There were other roadways that were at least partially obstructed throughout Lahaina town, multiple other roadways as well. But these are, the major roadways in Lahaina. The green would depict the egress routes at that time out of the neighborhood. And by 4:16 p.m., the fire would jump west or Makai over the Honoapi'ilani Highway and evacuations would begin Makaya, the highway. At 4:16, at the same time, some citizens would open a series of gates along with a police officer and start leading evacuees down Old Stewart Road, which is the old dirt road, Mauka of the Waikuli neighborhood. So again, those gates were locked. Some citizens with a key would actually open those gates. Police would follow, and they'd lead vehicles there as an alternative egress route, emergency route. By 4:22, structures would be reported on fire on Limahana Street. And by 4:24, back in the area of Dickinson and Mill, officers would rescue multiple burn victims out of the fire there. At 4:24, police would begin evacuating all of Waianae Street at this point due to multiple fully engulfed structures in the area. And at 4:29, the bypass would now be clear, and officers would begin leading vehicles up the bypass from Keawe Street and south out of Lahaina. At 4:37 p.m., police would return to Honoaupilani Highway between Ahola Road and Hokiokio Place and advise the utility company to clear the roadway. Southbound egress would be reopened shortly after that. At 4:45 p.m., police were still up in the neighborhoods, Kilauea Mauka, conducting evacuations. That's where this video will be here. This officer will be on the north side near the Kahoma Stream. He'd attempt to open the gate. Meanwhile, a citizen would come up with a sawzall and cut the chain. The second video is going to be the same officer on the opposite side of Kanakea Loop. And the officer, along with citizens, will open a series of gates to get some evacuees out that way. By 4:52 p.m., multiple apartment buildings would be fully engulfed in the area of Front Street and Kinui Street, and multiple officers would be in the area conducting evacuations. With evacuations still ongoing below the highway and above the bypass, as multiple areas were beginning to be inaccessible by that point. At 4:53, about 4:53, this officer depicted here had been helping in evacuations. He'd return to the Lahaina Cannery Mall, and he noticed that Front Street was backed up with traffic from that point south. So this officer would begin leading vehicles from the Lahaina Cannery Mall as well as Front Street up Kapunakea Street to the highway to head north, to evacuate north. This would be ongoing for, I'll show this video first. This is a citizen source video of evacuees around that time frame. And that's the status of that intersection. This is at Kapunakea on the highway looking south towards Keawe. So these officers would continue this until around 5:30. Continue directing people up to Honoaupilani Highway. You'll see in this next video, the officer he's going to be at Kapunakea Street and Front Street, right by that Safeway. He's going to be pointing vehicles up to the highway in order to alleviate that traffic that was basically a chain reaction of traffic down Front Street. When he's finished with that, the officer will begin heading south. If you look in the video, you look out his driver window, you'll see that he passes little to no vehicles at that point. So there's really very little traffic that he sees as he heads south from Kapunakea. He'll get as far as Kinui Street until the visibility in the area and the fire, he'll have to turn back around and just do evacuations of the neighborhoods in that area. So that's going to be here.
Traffic going north is
Everybody evacuate, 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 head north. Everyone evacuate, head north. Everybody evacuate, head north. Head north, evacuate, evacuate. Everybody evacuate, head north. Everyone evacuate, head north.
So at 5:34, there's reports and officers in the area. Traffic was gridlocked still, headed south. So Honopi'ilani Highway from Shaw Street to the area of Hokiokio Place was also still gridlocked at that point. So this video here, Citizen Source video, will show the conditions around that time. So officers would remain in that portion of town and assist in getting that evacuation traffic out until there is no visible traffic left on this side as well. Officers would continue these evacuations throughout Lahaina as the fire continued to spread, many of them working for well over 24 hours. Some of these actions would include driving into and through the areas of the fire. There were areas that our officers were not able to get to, despite their best efforts, and this was due to many roadway obstructions and visibility. Not included in this sequence of events are countless instances where police, fire, other first responders transported hundreds of individuals out of the fire. Also not included, but clear through our investigation, is that countless members of the community were selfless in their service to Lahaina by taking a variety of heroic actions. The investigation has shown that our officers, other first responders, and members of this community did extraordinary life-saving work in the face of the most unprecedented circumstances. Now, although we feared that there were fatalities, none were nor could be confirmed until August 9th at 8 a.m. From there, Maui Police Department conducted searches, and by the end of August 9th, there was over 40 recoveries made. In the coming days, we'll be joined by other agencies, and we're able to conduct multi-agency coordinated search efforts of the entirety of the burn zone. By August 11th, the FEMA Urban Search and Rescue teams would first arrive, the first teams, and by August 12th, we'd have full-scale USAR search and recovery operations would begin with multiple task forces and over 40 K-9 search and rescue teams. This happened all the way until August 25th when the FEMA search and rescue teams left. We also had military, other first responders, anthropologists, and local heavy equipment operators that would assist throughout this operation. So the following 3 slides, I'll show these are maps that are going to depict the locations in which those we lost were recovered. This first slide is going to be our furthest north map. This is showing portions from Keawe Street on the bottom, shows the Waikuli neighborhood, where 4 individuals were recovered, along with 1 individual that was recovered near Honopi'ilani Highway there. The second map here will depict the central portion of Lahaina. This is including Lahaina Road. And this was our most heavily impacted area. 69 individuals will be located from areas Mauka of Honopi'ilani Highway here. 12 individuals will be located in areas Makai of Honopi'ilani Highway here. Of those 12 Makai, we had 4 on Front Street. 1 was located within a structure. 2 were located over a seawall, and 1 was located near an unrelated vehicle. In areas we had 15 total individuals that were located within vehicles. Of those 15, 14 were located in areas Mauka of Honopi'ilani Highway, depicted in this picture here. This is going to be the area furthest south. This includes 11 individuals. This image will include our 15th individual that was in the vehicle, as well as our only recovery that was from within the ocean, that was in Lahaina Harbor. And here I'd like to introduce our forensic pathologist, Dr. Jeremy Stoopnagel.
Thank you. Afternoon. As part of our efforts to address the fire recovery efforts, we started with a morgue identification and notification task force. Representatives from multiple agencies and specialties were there. This included law enforcement, evidence specialists, fingerprint specialists, anthropologists, odontologists, forensic pathologists, and many others. Our Forensic Science Center, the capacity of the morgue suite and body storage area was greatly increased with the advent of disaster morgues and multiple refrigerated containers. Our personnel increased from 7 to 127. There was an immediate need for all supplies, tables, chairs, and anything else you could imagine that we'd need during this mass disaster. Many tasks need to be completed before the space was even fully operational. This next image is of an aerial of our Forensic Science Center with office space and our single autopsy suite towards the rear of the building. The landowner adjacent to our facility was gracious enough to lend us his space, in which we used it for refrigerated containers and other storage containers. In the back of the morgue, we had our disaster morgue tent operation set up. We also had a temporary portable x-ray machine towards the back. This is in image A, is one of our recovery sites showing the debris that was encountered, including concrete, drywall, and metal. We had teams of anthropologists, experts in bone examination, working in the field and at the morgue in concert with MPD and forensic pathology. An anthropologist would work oftentimes on their hands and knees in a very detailed effort to recover everything that was recoverable. Anthropologists, once they would find remains, would process the site all the way down to the naked concrete, recovering everything. Sometimes the fragments were as small as a quarter or smaller. Our autopsy protocol. The first confirmed fatality was on August 9th around 8 a.m. First autopsy was conducted on the 11th, and the last recovery was on October 12th. Each set of remains was diligently x-rayed, photographed, examined, and triaged by multiple specialists in an effort to document injury and identification. This next chart shows the distribution by age. We had 39% women and 61% men. Our age distribution showed that the majority of our fatalities were between 60 and 79 years of age. Within this age bracket, we had 60. We also had 3 deaths in children under the age of 19, a 7-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 14-year-old. The locations are as follows. We had 42 people inside structures, 15 sheltering in cars, and 39 outdoors, and 1 person found in the water. Identification was absolutely necessary. The main modalities, as you can see above, were fingerprint comparison, DNA comparison, dental comparison, medical device comparison. We were fortunate enough to have off-island assistance with a latent fingerprint expert helping our in-house expert. We had a company provide DNA advice and personnel and equipment on island. They brought the machine to the island. We also had local dentists coming forward to deliver x-rays for dental comparison, and we compared medical device serial numbers against medical records that we could find. This next image is of our disaster morgue tent area in the back. You can see anthropologists and others at work. Some bone fragments from different recoveries were refitted, allowing sets of remains to be reunified.
Many of the remains were extensively fragmented and separated, amplifying our initial death toll estimates. After consolidation of remains, the number of our deceased decreased. The initial death toll was a fluid estimate. This next graph shows the different modalities used for identification. Early on, the blue lines, fingerprints, were most critical, followed by purple lines, DNA, and a little bit later, dental. Before I introduce Officer Taylor, I'd like to thank the community for their unwavering, tireless efforts in our support. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As a result of the total devastation caused by the Lahaina fire, Chief Pelletier recognized the need to create a specialized task force having personnel from multiple agencies with specific training and qualifications to enable us to better respond to the many challenges created by the fire. As a result, the Morgue Identification and Notification Task Force was created. Members of the task force operated out of a centralized location at the Wailuku Forensic Facility. Having all the agencies working together, hand in hand under one roof, enabled members to rapidly solve problems, share information, and conduct many multi-agency investigations. Members of the task force had a unified objective, and that was to conduct investigations and provide information that would assist with the search and recovery efforts being made out in the field, to establish positive identification through a verified scientific analysis of fingerprint, DNA, medical record, and dental records, and to provide in-person notification to the families of those tragically lost in the fire. Early on, one of the significant challenges that we faced is that we were presented with over 3,000 missing person investigations. With the tireless efforts of over 150 federal law enforcement agencies, or federal law enforcement officers, we were able to investigate each one, and to date, we have narrowed that list down to the current 3 open missing person investigations. The combined expertise and cooperation among these agencies have been instrumental to the progress we have made with these missing person cases. One of the significant investigative methods we utilized to identify those that were tragically lost was accomplished by rapid DNA analysis. DNA analysis was performed by the Andy Rapid DNA Analysis Company. In order to achieve this, we collected 215 family reference samples from the families of those directly affected. In some instances, we had to collect DNA samples from family members internationally. This was accomplished by the collaborated efforts of members of the task force. Early on, it was brought to our attention that people were concerned sharing their DNA with a law enforcement entity. Our contract with Andy stipulated from the beginning that the DNA submitted would only be utilized for the positive identification of those lost in the fire, and none of the DNA samples submitted would be stored in any law enforcement database and would not be used in any future criminal or other law enforcement investigations. In addition to the collection and analysis of DNA, we acquired dozens of dental and medical records, which were also utilized as part of the identification process. This proved to be a valuable tool for identification when we faced challenges obtaining an appropriate DNA family reference sample. Our primary method of collecting DNA was through the family reference samples, which were provided by a buccal swab. This led to the identification of over 50 people that were victims of the fire. One of the unique challenges we had was there was an individual who was reporting missing that did not have an available biological next of kin that was available to provide DNA sample. Through investigation, we were able to determine that this individual would travel to the mainland on an annual basis to a family friend. And at her last visit to the residence, she had left a hairbrush. With our partners in the FBI, we were able to have the hairbrush collected and submitted to our laboratory for assessment. After the hair follicles from the hairbrush were analyzed, we were able to obtain a positive identification. And this presents one of the many unique challenges we face throughout this process. Countless emails, phone calls, and meetings with family members culminated in an in-person family briefing. The briefing was held at the Lahaina Hyatt. This gave the families the opportunity to meet with Mint investigators in person and learn about the nature and scope of the actions being taken to locate and identify those missing from the fire. This also provided us with the opportunity to dispel false rumors and misinformation that was being disseminated at the time. The Red Cross was instrumental in setting this and helping us set this event up. In addition, we had assistance from the Maui County Prosecutor's Office, and we were assisted by the Maui County chaplains and local faith leaders who were also there for emotional support. After a positive scientific identification of someone was made that was lost in the fire, an in-person notification was done for each and every single victim of the fire to their closest next of kin. At the time of notification, the Maui-based Mint investigators were accompanied by the Maui Police Department chaplains and the Billy Graham Rapid Response Team, who were there for emotional support and spiritual guidance. Although many of the notifications were done here in Maui, there were some family members that were stateside and in international locations. Our mainland and international in-person notifications were handled by our partners in the FBI. In Maui and Oahu, the Honolulu Police Department served as a crucial component with the Maui and Oahu-based notifications. To support the local Maui community and the families of those still missing, 2 police officers from the Mint Task Force have been transitioned into the newly created Cold Case Unit. This unit is dedicated to continuing efforts and bringing resolution to the active Maui missing person cases. This is the first time in Maui Police Department history that we have had a dedicated cold case unit. With this, the families of missing persons can know we have not forgotten you and we are actively working for you. Under the leadership and guidance of Chief Pelletier and the collective efforts, we were able to identify all 100 persons that were found that fell victim to the fire. And the contributions of the FBI, the Honolulu Police Department, the DPAA, the Disaster Mortuary Operational Response Team, the American Red Cross, the U.S. Mexican Consulate, the Maui Police Chaplains, among others, have been significant, and we are grateful to have had the opportunity to work with them throughout this process. And to the families directly affected, we would like you to know that everything we did at the Mint was with a sincere hope that we could reunite you with your families and provide guidance and support you through this incredibly difficult challenge.